Do you ever have a hard time trusting God? Would you say a lot of times that unbelief is an easier route to take than a life of faith? Well, today on Discover the Word, we'd like you to listen to a song that we hope will encourage you in your faith. It's an old hymn that, once you know the story behind it, will, we hope, speak to you in a deep way. Let me read a couple of lines that can help us during times of doubt and times of struggle. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust Him for His grace. Behind a frowning providence, He hides a smiling face. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan His work in vain, because God is His own interpreter, and He will make it plain. It sound like the person who wrote that had faith pretty much under control? Well, let me just say that there was a struggle behind those words. A man named William Cowper battled doubt like you wouldn't believe. And so learn more about his story and about his song that can encourage you in your faith next on today's Discover the Word. Hi, Brian Headinga welcoming you to our Tuesday time together for this week on Discover the Word. And you're hearing the tune of that song in the background. It's called God Moves in a Mysterious Way. Our lead teacher, Haddon Robinson, is going to tell us a story behind that song, because I think you'll find knowing what William Cowper went through to get to where he wrote those words helpful. You may be struggling for whatever reason with doubt and uncertainty, and those are awful, unsettling times. But the fact that you're listening today, we hope, will be something that will encourage you to hang on, because as Haddon will stress, some of our deepest doubts arise when we make quick judgments about God's work in the world and in our lives and in our circumstances. Now, normally, Discover the Word is a group Bible study, and the other members of the group will be back tomorrow to dig into our study of the writings of the Old Testament prophet Habakkuk. But today, Haddon is going to, one-on-one, tell us the story of William Cowper and a hymn that came out of his great struggle with doubt and questions he had about God. And so, Haddon?
I wonder if there's ever been a time in your life when you have doubted. I don't mean those questions that come into your mind that are brushed away by the first brisk winds of faith. No, I mean really doubted. To see the things you thought were certain shaken. The things you thought were pinned down coming loose at the spikes. If that's never happened to you, you can be very grateful. But if it has, you can be aware of the fact that you have a lot of company, that many of God's people, many of Christian leaders have gone through times of great doubt. You meet them on the pages of the Scripture. You meet them in the Gospels, and a man like Thomas. Or you meet them in the Old Testament, like the man who wrote the 73rd Psalm, a chap by the name of Asaph. You meet them in the Psalms where the psalmist is wrestling with great questions that don't come together easily. You meet them in life. You may actually look in the mirror and see it in yourself. If you have gone through doubt, I can empathize with you. I know it can be a very painful period, something very, very difficult. Some doubt comes, I think, because of physical conditions. It's amazing what a couple of good nights' sleep can do for you in wrestling with these dark moods of the soul. But there are others that just don't go away. When people are depressed, there may be all kinds of reasons for that depression, but often it has with it a sense of doubt. And it's the most difficult thing for them to handle. One man that I know, or know of, who went through this awful dark night of his soul was William Cowper. Cowper was a man who had a soul of a poet, but his poetry came out of a very difficult life. His mother died when he was 6. He was sent to a boarding school, and he was bullied by the other children in the school. He had fallen in love with a couple of young women, and each time it didn't come to anything. But then when he was about 32 years of age, William Cowper became a Christian, and it changed him. It made a deep impression in his life. But having become a Christian did not solve the problem of doubt. In fact, there were times in which he would have terrible nightmares. He believed that God had rejected him. He came to know John Newton. John Newton was the man who wrote the great hymn, Amazing Grace. And Newton ministered to him, tried to encourage him, helped him to see life in a different way. But in 1773, William Cowper went through an attack of almost madness. It so depressed him that he would never again enter a church. You talk about doubt. William Cowper knew doubt. You talk about depression. He was held in its grip for years. But the amazing thing was that William Cowper, in his doubt, wrote hymns. In fact, John Newton and William Cowper published a hymn book. And these hymns are the hymns that the Christians have sung across the years. One of the hymns in that hymn book, John Newton, he wrote the hymn Amazing Grace. And William Cowper wrote the hymn, Oh, for a Closer Walk with God. You may know that hymn. But another one that he wrote has great insight, and it was written out of the turmoil of depression and doubt. It's called That God Moves in Mysterious Ways. Let me read it to you. God moves in a mysterious way his wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep in unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, he treasures up his bright designs, works his sovereign will. Ye fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds you so much dread are big with mercy, and shall break in blessing on your head. Great words from a tortured soul. Listen to that hymn.
God moves in a mysterious way his wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep in unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, he treasures up his bright designs and works his sovereign will. Ye fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds you so much dread are big with mercy and shall break in blessing on your head. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind the frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Blind unbelief is sure to wear and scan his work in vain. God is his own interpreter, and he will make it plain.
Doubt is part of faith. Most people who wrestle with doubt come through it better, stronger people. An unexamined faith is probably not worth having. But occasionally there are people who, in their doubt and their depression, seem to cast away from God. But William Cowper at least says this: even to a mind that is plagued with doubt, there can come insight about the way God works and the way we can respond. William Cowper gives us that testimony across the years. And even though he was a man who had contemplated suicide, he gives us a perspective that we have to have as people of faith. God doesn't always show us what he is doing. God doesn't always give us answers, but he does give us himself. And if you're going through doubt today, you can cling to him when you do not necessarily have answers to the doubts of your soul.
Haddon Robinson telling us about William Cowper and his music on today's Discover the Word. And that observation is an important one, that sometimes God doesn't give us the answers to our questions and doubts. What he gives us is himself. And as you search and struggle, that can be of help. Diane Penning, the soloist, singing God Moves in a Mysterious Way. Our thanks to her and to John Daniels, the arranger, and Brian Felton, who was the producer for that segment. Discover the Word is furnished by RBC Ministries.